Hey, shalom, shalom from your Dutch Uncle John, here to tell you about what it is in the book of Joshua and how it parallels the book of Revelation. I talked about this in a previous video and said that I'm going to make a video on it someday. I've actually been working on this talk for probably 6 or 7 years. Every time I find a parallel, I throw it in, and it's it's definitely not complete, but we've got enough for at least part 1. And it's just so interesting because you want to know what's going to happen in the end of days. Read the book of Joshua. You know, history repeats itself. What's the other one? The past is prologue. So let's start with the book of Joshua. You can kind of break it down into 4 sections. Joshua 1 through Joshua 5. You have Joshua leading the children of Israel into the promised land. From 5:13 until 12:24, you have the Jews, the Hebrews, inheriting the land of Israel. Joshua 13 through 22, the land is divided among the 12 tribes. And the last 2 chapters, 23 and 24, Joshua charges the people to obey and serve the Lord. Okay? Now, this Joshua character, you know, he was the assistant to Moses. And the first time we hear about him is way back in Exodus 17, starting in verse 8. This is when they were fighting against Amalek, when they left Egypt. And we'll start with verse 8 here. Then Amalek came and fought against Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, "Choose men for us to go out and fight against Amalek. Tomorrow I will station myself on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." Joshua did just as Moses told him and fought against Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. So it came about when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed. But when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. And Moses' hands grew heavy. So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side and one on the other. So his hands were steady until the sun set. And Joshua defeated Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. Okay, a couple of things I want to point out here. Who is Amalek? He was the grandson of Esau. So you remember Jacob and Esau, right? Jacob got the blessing, Jacob got the birthright, and Esau, didn't sit well with him. He was always jealous of or angry that brother Jacob, he stole my birthright. He actually sold it to him for a bowl of stew, if you remember. And but he did kind of trick the father Isaac into giving him the blessing. So he's not real happy with Jacob. And then you can imagine Esau gets married, has children, and he's always talking bad about Jacob. And then those children have children, and they're talking bad about Jacob. And so all of Esau's line don't like Jacob. Okay? And Amalek is one of them. So at least you know who Amalek is. And also, during this battle against Amalek, I want you to look in verse 12 where it says, it ends, so his hands were steady until the sun set. In Hebrew, that is not the word steady. It's amunah. Amunah, this is where we get amen. It means faithful. His hands were faithful until the sun set. He held that staff up. Very nice. And by the way, they were told to destroy Amalek, wipe them all out. And the Jews never seemed to get them all. And so you have a spirit of Amalek which continues to this day. Hamas is Amalek, or they've got the spirit of Amalek. All right? You can see this in Deuteronomy 25:19. It says, "And it shall be when the Lord your God gives you rest from your enemies around you in your land, which the Lord your God is giving you to possess as an inheritance, that you shall blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget." had they only wiped out Amalek totally, the Jews today wouldn't be having all these problems that they have with their neighbors and enemies. Okay, and Joshua, remember now, he is the assistant to Moses. And Moshe, remember, it was prophesied that there's going to come a prophet in the future, the Messiah. And how will you know who the Messiah is? Well, Deuteronomy 18:18 states it clear. God says, I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers. I will put my words in his mouth, and he will tell them everything I command him. God is instructing Moses to tell the people, here's how you'll know who the Messiah is. He is going to be a prophet. He's going to be like you, Moses, and he's going to come from your brothers. So he's going to be Jewish. So you want to know who the Messiah is? Study Moses, and then find out who is most like Moses. We've got a 5-part series on Moses showing the parallels between Moses and Yeshua. I invite you to have a look at that because Jesus, Yeshua, has to be the Messiah. Okay. And remember, Moses, he was not allowed to enter the promised land. Deuteronomy 1, verse 37 and 38, it says, the Lord was also angry with me on your account, and he said, not even you shall enter the land. Joshua, son of Nun, who stands before you, will enter it. Encourage him, for he will enable Israel to inherit the land. And so Moses, he's not allowed to enter the promised land after he's led these people 40 years through the wilderness. He did go up on the mountain and he got to look at the promised land, but he wasn't allowed to enter it. Do you remember why he wasn't allowed to enter it? Well, let's just take a little side note on that, and I want you to see this word Mayim, because this is going to play a role into why Moses wasn't allowed to enter. Mayim is the word for water. It's a mem, yod, mem. Remember the Sophite letters. Some letters have a different ending if it's the last letter of the word. Mem is one of them. Both of these blue letters here are both mems. Okay? Notice Mayim, it ends in yud mem, which kind of Mayim is it a plural word? Is water plural? I don't know. It's just interesting that it has a plural ending. We look in the book of Bamidbar, Numbers, chapter 20, verse 11. Remember, they were through the wilderness, they needed water, and God told Moses, gather all the people together and take your staff and strike the rock, and water came forth. And then some 30-some years later, they're also in the desert and they need water, and God tells Moses, gather the people and speak to the rock. Well, Moses was a little bit angry with the people, and so when they all gathered together, because they were grumbling and mumbling, right? In Numbers 20:11, it says, then Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his rod twice, and water came forth abundantly, and the congregation and their beasts drank. All right. There's a lot packed into that right there. The first time they needed water, Moses struck the rock and water came out. The second time, Moses was to speak to the rock. But he's angry with the people, so what does he do? He takes his staff and he strikes the rock. And it could have been an accident. Strike the rock. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. No, he struck it twice. You strike it the second time, you're definitely disobeying the command to speak to the rock. So that's why Moses wasn't allowed into the promised land. And by the way, why did he want him to speak to the rock the second time and strike it the first time? Very cool thing. The rock is a picture of Messiah, of Jesus. And Jesus is going to have two visits. On the first visit, Jesus is going to be struck. Not only struck, he's going to be crucified. When Yeshua Jesus comes back, he's coming back as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And you don't strike the Messiah, Yeshua, when he comes back the second time. You speak to him. So God was setting up this beautiful parallel, and Moses kind of messed it up. He kind of messed it up, because striking it the second time was the wrong thing, but it showed us the parallel and how Moses messed it up. Okay? And it's very cool. Anyway, let's go on here. That word for rock in Hebrew is Selah. Okay? It's a Samek Lamed Ayin. Here it is. And let's make a rock. There it is, a big rock. And what does the verse say? Oh, it's a Samek is the first letter, and Samek is spelled Samek Mem Kaf. A Lamed, and Lamed is spelled Lamed Mem Dalet. And Ayin is spelled Ayin Yod Nun. And what does the verse say? Then Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock. You can see a big crack there. With his rod twice. And water came forth abundantly, and the congregation and their beasts drank. Notice, when the rock was split, what letters are left there in the middle? There's two mems and a yod. Or mem to yod. Mem to yod. What is that? That should ring a bell. Oh yeah, that's kind of like H2O. There's two mems and one yod. Two hydrogen and one oxygen. And if you have two mems and a yod, you can spell mayim, water. Very clever. Very, very clever. Okay, so back to Deuteronomy. It said the Lord was angry with me on your account, and he said, not even you shall enter the land. Joshua son of Nun, who stands before you, will enter it. Okay, this Joshua son of Nun. Nun, remember, is the 14th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Okay, and it's one of those letters that has a final form, Sophit. Okay, and here it is in 3 different fonts. The Nun makes the N sound, and its ancient picture is a fish, or it looks like a sperm even, and it represents life. Its gematria is 50. And so why does it represent life? Well, the fish's tail does this. It goes up and down. It's always moving, right? So that's pointing to it has life. And how does the letter Nun, the letter N, it goes up, down, up, right, in English. So that's where it comes from, our letter Nun, our letter N. So let's now look at some of the parallels between Joshua and Jesus, and more specifically, Jesus in the book of Revelation. Got it? Okay. So, the first thing we see is that Joshua is going to shepherd God's people, Israel. He's the one who's going to lead them into the promised land. In Matthew 2:6, it's quoting Micah 5:2. This is a messianic prophecy. So Matthew 2:6 says, "And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah. For from you will come forth a leader who will shepherd my people Israel." Again, quoting nearly verbatim from Micah 5:2. So we see Yeshua, the Messiah, he also is going to shepherd God's people Israel. So there's our first parallel. Let's look at Romans 8, starting in verse 2. "For the law of the Spirit of life has set you free in Christ Jesus from the law of sin and death. For what the law could not do, weak as it was through flesh, God did, sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh. And as an offering for sin, he condemned sin in the flesh, so that the requirement of the law might be fulfilled in us, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. So, what I'm seeing here in this parallel is Joshua gives Israel what Moses couldn't, the promised land. Makes sense, right? Moses couldn't lead them in, Joshua did. And Yeshua gives us what the law couldn't, God's salvation. Very nice parallel there. Very deep parallel there. I love it. Okay. So Numbers 13, starting in verse 3. So Moses sent them from the wilderness of Paran at the command of the Lord, all of them men who were the heads of the sons of Israel. These then were their names. Remember, Moses sends in 12 spies into the promised land before they enter the promised land. And he sent one person from each tribe. And here we have all the people that he sent in, okay, and from which tribe. And you'll notice that from the tribe of Ephraim, he sends this guy named Hoshea ben Nun. All right? Well, Hoshea ben Nun, there it is in the Hebrew. Hoshea means salvation. All right? And in Numbers 13:16, it says, these are the names of the men whom Moses sent to spy out the land. But Moses called Hoshea, the son of Nun, Joshua. So this guy whose name meant salvation, Moses had a nickname for him, or a new name for him, Joshua. Which I'm going to say Joshua sometimes, Joshua. They don't have a J in Hebrew, obviously. Okay. And Hoshea means salvation. Yehoshua means, and that's what it says here when he changed his name. If you look at the last line, the last word of the Hebrew verse in verse 16, it's Yehoshua is what he called him, which means Yah saves. Very nice. And in Matthew 1:21, in the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah, the angel says, she will bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. Okay. You know, the angel didn't say call him Jesus. Jesus is a Latinized name. I don't even know. The Greek is Eusus, and it somehow became Jesus in English and in a lot of languages. But that's not what the angel would have said, okay, to name. The angel would have said Yeshua. Because if you say, you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins, Jesus saving from sin, there's no connection between those two. You know? It'd be like, you will call his name Nick, because he will cut his face shaving. Yeah, I don't think so. You understand? Jesus and saving has nothing to do with one another. But Yeshua means Yah saves. That's the name that they were given. Okay? So, we have Yehoshua and Yeshua, both meaning Yah saves. So we have similar names of the main characters, Joshua and Yeshua. All right? In fact, you can see in one place, look in Nehemiah 8:17. It says, the entire assembly of those who had returned from the captivity made booths and lived in the booths. Indeed, the sons of Israel had not done so since the days of Joshua, the son of Nun, to that day. And there was very great rejoicing. In Nehemiah 8:17, look how they spelled Joshua. It's spelled Yud, Shin, Vav, Ayin. Exactly the same as Yeshua. So not only do they have similar names, I contend they have the exact name. Okay? So they have both, throughout the Bible, similar names and same names. And in Numbers 13:8, it said, from the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea, the son of Nun. Okay, Ephraim, remember, was one of the two sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay, and he was adopted by Jacob and became a full-fledged son of Jacob. So he is one of the 12. Okay, Levi was taken out because Levi is the priest, and Joseph was taken out because he died at 110 years old and was buried in a coffin in Egypt. Okay, so Joshua comes from Ephraim. Ephraim, the word, notice the first letter is an aleph, then you have a pei, resh, yod, mem. That word, those three letters, pei, resh, yod, is peri, which means fruit. All right? You'll see this a lot in Hebrew words, this fruit tie-in. And in Micah 5:2, which we read a little while ago, but as for you, Bethlehem Ephratah, too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you one will go forth for me to be a ruler in Israel. His going forth are from long ago, from the days of eternity. This again, Micah 5:2, is a messianic prophecy saying that the Messiah is going to come from Bethlehem Ephratah. And look at Ephratah. It has that pei resh tie-in in there. So there's a fruitfulness about the Messiah, and there's a fruitfulness about Joshua. Okay? So they both have that in common. Deuteronomy 34:9. Now Joshua the son of Nun was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him, so the children of Israel heeded him, and did as the Lord had commanded Moses. What the point of this is that Joshua was anointed by Moses, Moshe. In Isaiah 42:1, this is a messianic prophecy. Here is my servant who I uphold, my chosen one, in whom my soul delights. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations. So, the Messiah is going to be anointed. Matthew 3:16. This is when Yeshua is at the Jordan River being baptized by his brother, John the Baptist, Yochanan the Immerser. Verse 16 says, when he had been baptized, Jesus came up immediately from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened to him. And he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting upon him. And suddenly a voice came from heaven saying, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. So we have Joshua being anointed by Moshe, and we have Yeshua being anointed by the Spirit of God while he's being baptized. Another nice parallel, both anointed. Joshua 1, starting in verse 1. Now after the death of his servant Moses, the Lord said to Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, you and all these people, and cross over the Jordan into the land that I am giving to the children of Israel. I have given you every place where the sole of your foot will tread, just as I promised to Moses. Your territory shall extend from the wilderness and Lebanon to the great river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and west as far as the great sea. You know, so he's telling Joshua where the land that I'm going to give you is. I'm going to show you that in a minute. We did see here that their names are similar. And who is Joshua? Joshua is a military commander who is going to dispossess the usurpers of the promised land. Right? This land was given and promised to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. And who is Yeshua Jesus? He is coming back as a military commander who's going to dispossess the usurpers of the earth. Very nice parallel there. Okay? And we said that his territory was everywhere that his foot treads. from the wilderness and Lebanon to the great river Euphrates. The Euphrates River, by the way, was mentioned in Genesis chapter 2 as one of the rivers that flowed out of the Garden of Eden. So this river's been around for a long time, and it runs today through Baghdad, Iraq. And the Promised Land is going to go from the Euphrates to the Great Sea, toward the going down of the sun. That's the Mediterranean. You know, they're fighting in Israel today over this teeny tiny little piece of land. The Jews are just give us a little piece of land and we're happy, leave us alone. But no, the whole world wants to take away that little sliver that the Jews do have. Well, guess what? The Promised Land is going to go all the way to Iraq. That's what was been promised. And it's going to be delivered when Yeshua comes back. Very, very nice. Okay, Joshua 1:5. No one shall stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moshe, so will I be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall give these people the inheritance of the land that I swore to their fathers I would give them. Above all, be strong and very courageous. Be careful to observe all the law that my servant Moshe commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may prosper wherever you go. Notice, God is twice in here saying, be strong and courageous. Now, he repeats himself in 2 verses. Be strong and courageous. Verse 8. This book of the law must not depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. For then you will prosper and succeed in all you do. Have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous? Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Wow, this is the 3rd time, be strong and courageous. Joshua 1:10. Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, prepare your provisions, for within 3 days you will cross the Jordan to go in and take possession of the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess. But to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember what Moshe, the servant of the Lord, commanded you when he said, the Lord your God will give you rest, and he will give you this land. Why is he pointing out these 3? The Reubenites, Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. Because their portion of the Promised Land, when it was divided up, was going to be on the east bank of the Jordan River. Their land is where current-day Jordan is, and maybe part of Syria up there. And he's letting them know, you can read on in verse 14, your wives, your young children, and your livestock may remain in the land that Moshe gave you on this side of the Jordan, but all your mighty men of valor must be armed for battle to cross over ahead of your brothers and help them, until the Lord gives them rest as he has done for you. And your brothers also possess the land that the Lord your God is giving them. Then you may return to the land of your inheritance and take possession of that which Moshe, the servant of Yahweh, gave you on the east side of the Jordan. So, the whole tribe of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, they are not going to, the whole tribe, the white women and children, not all of them aren't going to cross over. Just the men to help fight and dispossess the land. Then they can return to their wives and their children on the east side of the Jordan and claim their rest in their portion of the Promised Land. Verse 16, so they answered Joshua, everything you have commanded us we will do, and everywhere you send us we will go. Just as we have obeyed Moshe in all things, so we will obey you. And may Yahweh your Elohim be with you, as he was with Moshe. Anyone who rebels against your order and does not obey your words, all that you command him will be put to death. Above all, be strong and courageous. A fourth warning, command, be strong and courageous. Very nice. Okay, let's move on to Joshua chapter 2, and we're going to just read some various verses here. Verse 1, Now Joshua the son of Nun sent out 2 men from Acacia Grove to spy secretly, saying, Go view the land, especially Jericho. So they went and came to the house of a harlot named Rahab, and lodged there. Verse 17, So the men said to her, We will be blameless of this oath of yours, which you have made us swear, unless when we come into the land, you bind this line of scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and unless you bring your father, your mother, your brothers, and all your father's household to your own home. 21, Then he said, According to your words, so be it. And she sent them away, and they departed. And she bound a scarlet cord in the window. Remember, these 2 spies went in and to Jericho to spy things out. Well, this is enemy territory. And this woman, Rahab, the harlot, she hid them in her house. And as repayment for hiding them in the house, they said, We will spare you whenever we all come and attack Jericho. But we're not going to spare you unless we see a red cord hanging out of your window. Then we'll know, don't touch anybody in that house. You can bring your whole family, your mother, father, brothers, sisters, everybody, whoever's in that house will be spared. And then she let them out the window and down a cord. Okay? And when the Jews came back and to attack Jericho after they entered the promised land, Rahab and her whole family was spared. Joshua 6:22, but Joshua had said to the 2 men who had spied out the country, Go into the harlot's house, and from there bring out the woman and all that she has, as you swore to her. The Jews kept their word and saved Rahab. And Rahab, you will see, is going to show up again in the Bible story. But we have Joshua sends in 2 unnamed spies. We don't know who those 2 guys were who went in, but he sent 2 in. So is there a parallel there? Yeah. Remember in Revelation 11, verse 3, And I will grant authority to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1260 days, clothed in sackcloth. Remember, during the first half of the tribulation period, God is going to send in 2 witnesses in Jerusalem to proclaim and profess Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah. Who were those 2 witnesses in Revelation? We don't know. They're unnamed. Just like the parallel here in the book of Joshua. Although I've done 2 videos on the 2 witnesses, and I believe it's Elijah, Eliyahu, and Moses. I could be wrong, but I'm not. I don't think I am. Okay. And I encourage you to go back, or invite you to go back and look at the Revelation 2 Witnesses video, and you'll see that parallel there. And those 2 witnesses in Revelation 11, it says, When they have finished their testimony, the beast that comes up out of the abyss will make war with them, and overcome them, and kill them. And their dead bodies will lie in the street of the great city, which mystically is called Sodom and Egypt. What? Okay, I know that these 2 witnesses that God's sending in Revelation, they're going to be preaching in Jerusalem. And then they're going to be killed, and their bodies are going to lie in the street of the great city. Where are they going to be killed? In Jerusalem? It says, here's a hint, which mystically is called Sodom. Is Jerusalem known as Sodom? And Egypt? Those are, didn't know that Jerusalem was known as by those two names. Let's see what the rest of that verse says. Where also their Lord was crucified. Okay, that's Jerusalem. So now that's a big hint we're getting that Jerusalem is known as Sodom. Why is he called Sodom? I think it's because of the sin that's going to be taking place at the time. You know, the Jews have rejected their Messiah, and they're not following the law as God or Yeshua commanded. Not God or Yeshua. They're one and the same. And why is Jerusalem referred to as Egypt? And I think that because in Egypt the Jews were in bondage. And in Jerusalem at this time, the Jews are going to be in bondage of sin. Not physical bondage like the Egyptians held them, but under the bondage of sin. But nevertheless, it's Jerusalem. So the parallel is they both send in two unnamed witnesses. Joshua 6:22, but Joshua had said to the two men who had spied out the country, go into the harlot's house, and from there bring out the woman and all that she has, as you swore to her. I told you Rahab, we're going to see her again because she's famous in this messianic line. Hebrews 11:31 in the Brit Hadashah, it says, by faith the prostitute Rahab did not perish along with those who were disobedient after she had welcomed the spies in peace. And in James 2:25 in the New Testament, in the same way was Rahab the prostitute not justified by works, also when she received the messengers and sent them out by another way. Okay, we talked about Matthew 1:21, that she will bear a son and call his name Yeshua. In Hebrews 9:28, it says, so Christ also, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time for salvation without reference to sin to those who eagerly await him. I think Rahab kind of fits in that category. She was eagerly awaiting her salvation when the Jews attacked Jericho. And we see that both Yeshua and Joshua, they both bring salvation to sinners. Rahab, sinner, harlot, okay? And Yeshua, Jesus, in Hebrews 9:28, he's offered once to bear the sins of many. Nice parallel there. Joshua 2:17, so the men said to her, we will be blameless of this oath of yours which you have made us swear, unless when we come into the land you bind this line of scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and unless you bring your father, your mother, your brothers, and all your father's household to your own home. That word scarlet is shani, okay? And Joshua 2:21, she, Rahab, then said, according to your word, so be it. So she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied a scarlet cord in the window. The word for cord in Hebrew is tikva. Okay? So, tikva shani, scarlet cord. Do you know that word cord, tikva, has another meaning? It's not only cord, it's also the Hebrew word for hope. And the national anthem of Israel is called Hatikva, the hope. Perhaps you've heard it. It's been playing a lot lately. You've got all these people protesting against Israel, and then you have groups of Jews who also are getting together and singing Hatikva. Very nice. Here it is, the first verse. Oh, while within a Jewish breast beats true a Jewish heart, and Jewish glances turning east to Zion finally dart. Okay, that's the rhyming version of it. Here it is in the Hebrew and another version in English. Very, very nice. Genesis 38:27. This scarlet cord that we see that Rahab is to leave hanging out the window, this scarlet cord is a thread that runs all through the Bible. In Genesis 38:27, remember Judah and Tamar? I don't want to go, we've done a video on that. It's in the Joseph video. I invite you to go look at that. When it came time for Tamar to give birth, there were twins in her womb. And as she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand. So the midwife took a scarlet thread and tied it around his wrist. This one came out first, she announced. But when he pulled his hand back and his brother came out, she said, "You have broken out first." So she named him Perez. Then his brother came out with a scarlet thread around his wrist, and he was named Zerach. That's so prophetic there. The first hand came out. This is a picture of whenever the Messiah shows up, and the Jews came out, and then they saw Jesus, Yeshua, and it's not what they were expecting, and they got the red cord. They were the chosen, but they pulled back. They didn't accept their Messiah. Then the Gentiles burst forth. Peretz, the Hebrew word to burst forth is Peretz. That's why they named him Peretz, because that second baby burst forth. And then later the first baby with the thread does get born, and that's what's going to happen with the Jews. The Jews rejected, the Gentiles burst forth, and eventually the Jews will be born again. What did Jesus say in John chapter 3 to Nicodemus? You must be born again. When you think about it, here you have Tamar and you have Rahab. Rahab is a harlot. Tamar dressed like a harlot and tricked her father-in-law to sleep. Look at the Messiah's lineage. We have Lot and his daughter. Remember, Lot was living in Sodom and Gomorrah, and he was told to leave and don't look back. And what did he do? He left, and his wife looked back and turned to a pillar of salt. But Sodom and Gomorrah was totally destroyed. And the daughters, they assumed that the whole world has been destroyed. And now the only three people left are Lot and the two daughters. So the daughters can conspire to say, hey, let's get Dad drunk, and I'll sleep with him tonight, and you can sleep with him tomorrow night, because we're the only three people left on the planet, and we need to repopulate the earth. So you have this daughter sleeping with her father. The baby was conceived in incest. And what did they name the baby? Moab. Mo in front means from in Hebrew, and Abba, his father. Moab means from daddy. And if you look at Moab today, that area, it's the area to the east of the Dead Sea. That's Moab. And from Moab, years later, you get the Moabite woman Ruth. A foreigner. How in the world can a foreigner be woven into this messianic line? And so there's the mother's side. And then you have Judah and Tamar. Well, Tamar, she dressed like a prostitute and tricked Judah into sleeping with her. And so this baby is conceived in deceit. And she has the twins, Zerach and Peretz. Peretz has a son named Salmon. And Salmon is the one who marries Rahab the prostitute, the one that hung the scarlet cord out her window. So now you have a baby that's conceived by a harlot. But that baby, Rahab and Salmon's baby, is Boaz. a very close type of the kinsman redeemer. So you have Boaz and Ruth, and together they produce Obed. Obed has Jesse. Jesse has David. The son of David is Messiah. It's prophesied. Messiah, Mashiach. How about Yeshua HaMashiach? Jesus the Christ. Remember, the word Christ means anointed one. Mashiach, Christ, Messiah, anointed one. It's the same. So, looking at Messiah's lineage, you have Lot and the daughter. You have a Moabite, a foreigner. Lot and the daughter conceived in incest. Judah and Tamar conceived in deceit. Rahab conceived by a harlot. Notice this lineage is not squeaky clean, the Messiah's lineage. You know, if I was going to create a religion and I've got this Messiah figure or God figure, you would think it's going to be just squeaky clean, perfect. He's the perfect. But that's not how Yeshua is perfect. But his lineage is not. How is it that God can overcome all of these sins or all of these sinners to produce this perfect Messiah? Grace, 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 and grace. Very nice. Grace is so abundant from our God. Beautiful. Okay, let's continue with this scarlet thread. Numbers 19, verse 6. The priest is to take cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet wool, and throw them into the burning heifer. Then the priest must wash his clothes and bathe his body in water. After that he may enter the camp, but he will be ceremonially unclean until evening. Remember the red heifer, there's such a thing as ceremonial clean and unclean. And if you have something that's unclean, the only way you can make it clean is you have to get a perfectly red heifer. Not a single white hair, its eyeballs, its tongue, its hooves. Everything is red. And then you have to sacrifice it, take it outside the camp, burn it, throw in some cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet wool, take the ashes, mix it with water, and sprinkle it on whatever you're trying to make ceremonially clean. The Jews today cannot rebuild the temple unless all of the utensils and all of the things that they need are ceremonially clean. I have a whole video on red heifer. Have a look at that. Because the Jews are looking for a red, perfectly red heifer. Because they need to do this sacrifice outside the camp. By the way, Yeshua is the picture of the red heifer. He was crucified outside the camp. He was crucified on a cross of cedar wood. When he was thirsty, they put hyssop, vinegar on a hyssop branch and put it up for him to drink. So all of these pieces are tying in with Yeshua. Okay, Leviticus 14:49. To cleanse the house, he shall take 2 birds and cedar wood and scarlet string and hyssop. Verse 50, he shall slaughter 1 bird in the earthenware vessel over running water. Then he shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet string with the live bird, dip them in the blood of the slain bird as well as in the running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. Again, there's that scarlet thread running through. And then verse 53, however, he shall let the live bird go free outside the city into the open field. So he shall make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. Tahar, that is the ceremonially clean. Tahar. Song of Solomon, your lips are like a scarlet thread, and your mouth is lovely. Your temples are like a slice of pomegranate behind your veil. Again, scarlet. Runs the whole way through, and so you have a parallel here with Joshua, and Yeshua with a scarlet thread. Okay. Joshua 4:4. So Joshua called the 12 men whom he had appointed from the sons of Israel, 1 man from each tribe. In Mark 3:16, it says, these are the 12 he appointed. Simeon, whom he named Peter, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, whom he named Boanerges, meaning sons of thunder. Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, and Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Yeshua. So we have Joshua and Yeshua both appointing 12, Joshua 12 spies, Jesus 12 apostles. Joshua 4:8, thus the Israelites did as Joshua had commanded them. They took up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, one for each tribe of Israel, just as Yahweh had told Joshua, and they carried them to the camp where they set them down. Joshua also set up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan, in the place where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant stood, and the stones are there to this day. Remember, when the Jews entered the Promised Land, they came from the Jordan side and crossed into the Promised Land, and as they were carrying the Ark across, the river stopped, and everyone crossed on dry land. That's pretty amazing. And to set up a memorial, they set up a pile of 12 stones in the middle of that river. And when the river resumed flowing, we assume those 12 stones are still there to this day. Why do we assume that? Because verse 9 ends with, and the stones are there to this day. Okay? Remember, when Jesus is being baptized, look in Matthew 3, verse 7. But when he, Yochanan the Immerser, John the Baptist, saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees coming to this place of baptism, he said to them, you brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the coming wrath? Produce fruit, then in keeping with repentance. And do not presume to say to yourself, we have Abraham as our father, for I tell you that out of these stones God can raise up children for Abraham. What's John the Baptist talking about here? I tell you, out of these stones. What stones? I think John the Baptist is referring to the 12 stones that Joshua placed there years and years and years earlier, 1,000 years earlier or more. And you current Jews who are rejecting Messiah and who are a bunch of hypocrites, just know God can raise up from these stones children for Abraham. He don't need you. Very nice. So the stones, I think, it says, the stones are still there in John the Baptist's time. Very nice. Okay, so we have setting up stones in a river. Is there a parallel to that? Well, sure there is. Look in Revelation 21. This is the new heaven and the new earth, the new Jerusalem. Look in verse 10. And he carried me away. This is John the Revelator, the apostle who's writing this, and he was taken up and shown what was to come. Verse 10, and he carried me away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain, and he showed me the great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, having the glory of God. Her light was like a most precious stone, like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. Also, she had a great and high wall with 12 gates, and 12 angels at the gates, and names written on them, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. 3 gates on the east, 3 gates on the north, 3 gates on the south, 3 gates on the west. Verse 14, now the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. The city is laid out as a square. Its length is as great as its breadth, and he measured the city with a reed, 12,000 furlongs. Its length, breadth, and height are equal. The foundations of the wall of the city were adorned with all kinds of precious stones. The first foundation was jasper, sapphire, chalcedony, emerald, sardonyx, sardius, chrysolite, beryl, topaz, chrysoprase, jacinth, and the 12th amethyst. So we got these 12 stones, okay, showing up here on the foundation. We know that Joshua set 12 stones within a river. We saw that in Joshua 4:9. And John sees in Revelation, look at 22:1. Then the angel showed me a river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. So Yeshua, he's going to set a river within 12 stones. I think that's a very cool parallel. Joshua sets 12 stones in a river. Yeshua sets a river within 12 stones. Very nice. I'm going to have a drink on that one. Today we have cherry juice and water and ice. Okay, so there's the parallel. Joshua 4:19. And the people came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month and camped in Gilgal, in the east border of Jericho. So Joshua enters the land on Nisan 10. Very nice. John 12:1 in the New Testament. Then Yeshua, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, which had been dead, whom he raised from the dead. So we have Yeshua coming to Bethany on Nisan 9. Passover is Nisan 14. Look at John 12:12. The next day a great multitude had come to the feast when they heard that Yeshua was coming to Jerusalem. And they took branches of palm trees and went out to meet him and cried out, Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel. Then Yeshua, when he found a young donkey, sat on it, as it was written, Fear not, daughter of Zion. Behold, your king is coming, sitting on a donkey's colt. He's quoting here in verse 15, Zechariah 9:9. But what we see is Yeshua is entering Jerusalem on Nisan 10, the same day that Joshua entered the promised land. Yeshua is entering Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. Nisan 10. Nisan, by the way, is could be late March, early April on our calendar. Okay, this is when you see Passover as Nisan 14. Joshua 4:19, and we just read this, but look what it says on the last line. And they camped in Gilgal in the east border of Jericho. So Joshua enters the land from east to west. That's odd because remember, they were in Egypt. Do we have a map here? We do. Look, here's Egypt, and they're trying to get to the promised land, and somehow they went all around here and come up and entered this way. If you're going from Egypt to Israel, it looks like you go from west to east. But no, they wandered for 40 years, and they entered from east to west. How strange is that? Okay. Well, look at Matthew 24:27. For just as lightning comes from the east and flashes even to the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. Yeshua Jesus will enter the land from east to west. Another beautiful parallel. Joshua 5:13. Now it came about when Joshua was by Jericho, he raised his eyes and looked, and behold, a man was standing opposite him with his sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said to him, Are you for us or for your enemies? He said, No, rather I have come now as captain of the army of the Lord. And Joshua fell on his face to the ground and bowed down and said to him, What is my Lord to say to his servant? And the captain of the Lord's army said to Joshua, Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy. And Joshua did so. Whoa! Okay, remove your sandals from your feet. This is holy ground. Where have we seen that before? Whenever Moses goes up Mount Sinai and the burning bush, God told him, remove your sandals, you're on holy ground. The only time you're on holy ground is if God is there. This servant of the Lord who's drawn the sword, this is Yahweh, the Lord. Because he's telling him, remove your sandals. The place where you're standing is holy. This is the Lord. This is Yeshua. We have Joshua meets Yeshua, or Yeshua meets Yeshua. This is a face-to-face meeting. That's a nice parallel. Joshua 6. Now Jericho was tightly shut because of the sons of Israel. No one went out and no one came in. But Yahweh said to Joshua, see, I have handed Jericho over to you with its king and the valiant warriors. And you shall march around the city, all the men of war circling the city once. You shall do so for 6 days. Okay, so we got Joshua marching around the city once per day for 6 days. Also, 7 priests shall carry 7 trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. Then on the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets. So what do we have? On the 7th day you're going to do 7 marches. Okay? And then the priest shall blow the trumpets. So you got 7 trumpets blowing after the 7th march on the 7th day. Got it. Now let's look in Revelation 5. Then I saw a scroll in the right hand of the one seated on the throne. It had writing on both sides and was sealed with 7 seals. So in Revelation we have Yeshua, the one seated on the throne. It had writing on both sides and was sealed with 7 seals. When the Lamb opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and they were given 7 trumpets. When the 7th seal is open, there's 7 trumpets. Then I heard a loud voice from the temple saying to the 7 angels, go, pour out on the earth in 7 bowls of God's wrath. So on the 7th trumpet you have 7 bowls. You know what? I see a parallel here. We have events occurring in telescopic sevens. It's happening with Joshua. It's happening with Yeshua in the book of Revelation. It's there, my friends. Okay, Joshua 6:8. So it was when Joshua had spoken to the people that the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before Yahweh advanced and blew the trumpets, and the ark of the covenant of the Yahweh followed them. The armed men went before the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard came after the ark, while the priests continued blowing the trumpets. I see a picture here of Jericho is a picture of the world. Encircling Jericho 7 times, I think this is a picture of the saints executing the Great Commission. Remember the Great Commission? Acts 1:8. But you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you shall be witnesses to me in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the end of the earth. Joshua 6:5. It shall, watch this. Watch this. This is so cool. It shall come to pass when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, that all the people shall shout with a great shout. Then the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people shall go up every man straight before him. All right, you got all that? Now, how to look at Revelation chapter 8, verses 2. And I saw 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. So the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. 6:10. Now Joshua commanded the people, saying, you shall not shout or make any noise with your voice, nor shall a word proceed out of your mouth until the day I say to you, shout. Then you shall shout. And the 7th time it happened, when the priests blew the trumpet, that Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Yahweh has given you the city." Revelation 8, we read, when he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Okay, so we have a period of silence on both of these, yes? When they're marching around, they're not allowed, shh, shh. Not until we say shout. And in Revelation, there's silence for about a half an hour. I don't know what happens when he opens that 7th seal, but it is so devastating that there's silence in heaven for half an hour. Whew. Okay, watch this. Joshua 6:12. And Joshua rose early in the morning, and the priest took up the ark of the Lord. So the people shouted when the priest blew the trumpet. And it happened when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, and the people shouted with a great shout, that the wall fell down flat. Then the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city. Notice what we have here. The priest took up the ark. There's the ark, 1. And then the people shouted, 2. And then the priest blew trumpets, 3. And then the wall fell down. The city collapsed, 4. You got the order there? Ark, shout, trumpets, city collapsed. Look at Revelation 11:13. In the same hour there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city fell. In the earthquake 7,000 people were killed, and the rest were afraid and gave glory to God of heaven. The second woe is past. Behold, the third woe is coming quickly. Verse 15, and the 7th angel sounded his trumpet, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. Then the temple of God was opened in heaven, and the ark of his covenant was seen in his temple. And there were lightnings, noises, thunderings, an earthquake, and great hail. What do we have here? At the beginning, we have the city falls. The city fell. City collapsed. Then we have trumpets sounding in verse 15. Then we hear loud voices. And then the ark of his covenant was seen in the temple. Did any of that look familiar? You know, we've talked about chiastic structures in the Bible. This is chiastic structure. In Joshua, the ark was seen first. Then the people shouted. Then the priest blew trumpets. Then the walls fell down. In Revelation, it's the opposite. The city falls, then the trumpets, then the loud voices, then the ark of covenant is seen in the temple. It's a chiastic structure. Beautiful. I have a whole video on chiastic structures. I invite you to watch that. Okay, by the way, this whole chiastic structure concept, it's bookends. The whole Bible is bookends. It starts out with eternity past, it ends with eternity future. There's a garden in the beginning. There's a beautiful garden at the end where we're all going to live. Right? He's planting these trees along the river. You can, the whole way in the beginning, in the middle is the cross. Everything points into the cross. You had days of Noah in the beginning, and at the end it says, as in the days of Noah, it's going to be so bad that he's going to destroy the earth again, this time with fire. Okay, I think this is a good place to wind it up, and we'll probably do a part 2. We almost have to. I got more material, and it's there's just so much parallel between Joshua and the book of Revelation. Anyway, to God be the honor, to God be the glory, to God be the praise. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Wait! We have a bonus. Heads up, we're going to do 2 bonuses today. How about that? That's cool. Okay, look at Deuteronomy 1:38. It says, Joshua, son of Nun, who stands before you, will enter it. Encourage him, for he will enable Israel to inherit the land. Okay, Joshua, son of Nun. I told you Nun was the 14th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Gematria is 50. And this picture was a fish, okay, and it represented life, right? And his name was Hoshea ben Nun. So if it's Hoshea ben Nun, that means Nun begat Joshua. Logical? Yeah. Which you could say a fish brought forth Joshua, because Nun represents fish. All right? Where have we seen a fish bringing forth someone? In Jonah 2:10. And the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land. We have a fish that brings forth Jonah. In a different way than you would expect, but it's there. And we have Nun, who brought forth Joshua. Okay, so where's the tie in there? Well, I think it's going to be in Matthew 12:40. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Yeshua Jesus is comparing himself to Jonah. Okay? In Jonah, a fish brought forth Jonah, and in Joshua, a fish brought forth Joshua. It's there. All right. Thanks for watching. Again, see you later. Oh, wait! I told you there's a second bonus. Here's the second bonus. Look at Joshua 8. I just want to point out a couple other little incidents that happened in the book of Joshua. 8:28 says, so Joshua burned Ai and made it a permanent heap of ruins, a desolation to this day. This is after they've entered the promised land and they are now battling different groups that are there. Okay? And verse 29, it says, he hung the king of Ai on a tree until evening. And at sunset, Joshua commanded that they take down the body from the tree and throw it down at the entrance of the city gate. And over it they raised a large pile of rocks, which remains to this day. So with Joshua, we have a dead body hanging on a tree, and the body is removed before sunset. Okay? In one of the battles that Joshua was going to fight, in Joshua 10, it says, on the day that the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israelites, Joshua spoke to Yahweh in the presence of Israel. O sun, stand still over Gibeon. O moon, over the valley of Ayahalon. So the sun stood still and the moon stopped until the nation took vengeance upon its enemies. Is this not written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. Wow! So we have the sun is shining at night because it's shown for an extra almost 24 hours. That's interesting. What else? How about this? Joshua 10. Now the 5 kings had fled and hidden in the cave of Makkedah. And Joshua was informed, the 5 kings have been found. They are hiding in the cave at Makkedah. So Joshua said, roll large stones against the mouth of the cave and post men there to guard them. Okay, so some of the kings that they were fighting against ran and hid in the cave. They rolled a large stone on the mouth of the cave, and they posted guards at the cave opening. You know, where have we seen any of these before? You know, with Yeshua, there's a dead body hangs on a tree. The body had to be removed before sunset. The sun darkened in the day. When he's hanging on the cross, it went dark for 3 hours. Then when they buried him, they rolled a large stone over the tomb opening, and they posted guards at the cave opening. So not only do we have parallels between Joshua and the book of Revelation, we've got parallels between Joshua and the crucifixion story. There's 5 of them right there. I'm sure we can find more. And you'll have to tune into the next Joshua Part 2 to find out. All right, there's your 2 bonuses. God bless. See you soon. Bye-bye.